Five Nights at Freddy's, Salvage, Chapter 2. Vicky had already applied Max as a night guard, apparently. He was to start the following night at 12 a.m., the way it always was. So unbeknownst to Tommy or Jeremy, Max arrived with a pocket flashlight and a taser, the only two weapons he figured the company would let him bring. Max was given directions by Vicky on where to find her, so despite going through some mild bouts of PTSD, Max found a secret passageway leading to the underground area of the pizzeria. He made his way down the stairs, feeling his stomach churn. The dimly strobing lights overhead didn't help. Some serious maintenance needed to be done down on them. "I'm here, Vicky," Max called. "No funny stuff." Vicky emerged from behind a pile of metal trash, materializing seemingly out of thin air. "Hey, Maxie, didn't you miss me?" she asked, wagging her tail. "What, not even a little?" Max hesitated before sighing and hugging Vicky. At least she was the one animatronic that thought it was a waste of time and effort trying to kill him. And she did save him a few times back then, so there was that. The hybrid purred as she nuzzled her toothy snout to Max's neck, which made his heart flop a bit, but he didn't dare flinch. "Fine, I did miss you," Max said. "I'm glad you're still okay." Vicky let him go and straightened her still beautiful plaid dress, as though he had gotten cooties on her. She said, "That's more like it. Now please lead me back up to the main floor. There's something in the company records I have to show you." They went back up and into his office. A computer was sitting on the desk. Huh, Max thought. I don't remember that ever being there. Vicky instantly did some poking around on the computer. Has she done this before? Max wondered. Then she found what she was looking for. A file that read Employee Policy. "Read this," Vicky told Max. He did, and couldn't believe what he was seeing. According to the policy, any former employees who had either quit or gotten fired still had the chance to come back to work again. Almost like a clean slate kind of scenario. "You weren't lying then," Max murmured. "Afton can return." Vicky pulled up another company record, this one dating 1987. "That's not all," she growled. "Get a load of this." As Max read and reread some of the lines, he felt all of the air sucked out of his lungs. The guard sunk to the floor, pulling his legs to his chest. "William was the manager?" Max whispered, a cold feeling settling over him. Vicky asked, "Seriously, how could you have missed that one? I thought you were around during that time." "I was," Max replied. It's all such a blur, and Henry never told me, so I assumed he was still the manager. I thought he told me everything." Vicky sat down next to him, mimicking his position. "I guess even good men take dark secrets to their graves," she said. "And anyway, you hadn't had the slightest clue that Afton was the killer until a year later, remember?" Max whimpered, feeling the panic spread through his body like cancer. Why was this happening? Why couldn't he remember 1987? He could remember key events like the bite, for instance. But was it really possible that he couldn't recall his life the way it was 2 years ago? Almost as if she sensed his dread, Vicky hugged him. "We'll get him, Max," she snarled. "That bastard will consider it a great mercy if death reaches him before I do." Max groaned, getting to his feet. "I hope you're right, Vicky." "Of course I'm right. Oh, by the way, where's my teddy bear?" she asked, jumping up. Max was confused at first, then realization dawned on him. "You mean Freddy? Same spot he's always been, I guess," he said, clicking on the monitors next to the computer. "On stage with Bonnie and Chica." Vicky grinned, her different colored eyes lighting up. "So the old gang's still here, huh? Guess it's time for my resurrection party." Max grabbed her paw before she could run away. "Vicky, wait," he commanded. Vicky, for once, obeyed him. Max said, "I know how much you care about Freddy, but—" He trailed off, not knowing exactly how to complete the sentence. Vicky gave him an almost angry look. "What?" she growled. "Are you going to say he's forgotten about me? Hates my guts for protecting you? Or worse, maybe he moved on?" Staying calm, Max said, I don't know." Vicky huffed and nearly took Max's arm off when she pulled her paw back. "No, I'll tell you what you don't know," she muttered. "You don't know Freddy like I do." With that, Vicky took off and Max was left alone with his thoughts. He decided to look around a bit more on the computer. Apart from having automated things like toilets that clean themselves, printing, ordering things online, and advertisements, there were a few locked files Max couldn't get into. He wondered, not without some regret, what else Henry hadn't mentioned to him the whole time he worked for this company. He felt deeply upset that none of this had been resolved in the past. Before Henry. With a sigh, Max turned off the computer and decided to go see where Vicky went. As he was doing so, he was mildly alarmed to see several animatronics he didn't recognize walking around. Though they seemed a bit annoyed of his presence, none of them had pursued Max or even so much as snapped in his direction. Did Vicky tell them about him? Thank God. Max approached the main stage, where the original characters were just powering on. He held his breath as Bonnie stomped over and stared him down for a long time. Chica leaned over, sniffing his hat before grabbing it between her teeth. Chica, give that back, Max laughed, cracking a smile at her. Chica froze. One of Bonnie's ears twitched. That's right, Max murmured. You guys remember me, don't you? A growl was heard directly behind him. Max turned to see Foxy, who was standing so close his snout nearly touched his forehead. Hey, matey. Remember when I fixed you? Max calmly asked, holding one hand out in a peaceful gesture. The fox pirate raised his hook for a moment, snarling. Don't even think about it, Max warned sternly, pulling out his flashlight. Foxy stopped, cocking his head. Bonnie and Chica both took a step closer, warbling to one another. Then Chica meekly handed Max his hat. That's better, Max whispered. The animatronics, now docile, focused their attention on their surroundings. Somehow, it was like Max had managed to convince them that they would be terribly punished if harm had ever befallen him. And he wasn't about to change their minds. Around them, the restaurant had changed significantly. There were definitely some new characters. Sure, there were bears, foxes, rabbits, and maybe the occasional chicken here and there. But there were also new species, like a frog, hippo, an elephant, a wolf, and a few different themed robots. Unsettlingly enough, there were humanoids, or androids as Max called them, as well. For so many animatronics, there were also lots of stages for each band or theme. Then there was an arcade, an indoor playground. It was like the pizzeria had become substantially larger than what had originally appeared. So much time and investment had surely gone into all of this, and unfortunately it would be for nothing should another liability pop up. Max was surrounded by liabilities. All of these animatronics, the majority of them free-roaming ones at that, could kill or maim someone, and probably not even on purpose. He supposed there may have been dozens of day guards or something to protect people in this now department store-sized restaurant, but did any of them really care the way Max did? Or was this once again all about the money? Max finally found Vicky walking up to Freddy Fazbear. Freddy? She asked. The bear turned around, then froze. The two of them locked eyes like they were trying to register who the other one was. Then tears came from Freddy's eyes as he cradled Vicky in his arms, nuzzling his huge head into hers. I missed you too, my friend, Vicky said, tearing up a bit, too. But I'm all right. It's going to take more than some silly fall to kill me, right? Freddy smiled in response, carefully putting her back down before turning to see Max. And like all guards caught in the animatronic bear's gaze, Max felt his nerves rattle a bit. Freddy, Max greeted, trembling slightly. Still as intimidating as ever, I see. The bear's smile faltered, but only a little. He came up and slowly pat Max's head, one eye twitching. Oh, Lord, Max thought. He still probably hates me. Vicky strolled up to Max. It's a full house in here, isn't it? She asked, glancing around them. Max, skittish around all these giant, potentially murderous animatronics, nodded. When they said they were having a grand reopening, I think they really meant it, he commented. Well, I'm officially confused, Vicky said. I only spent a year down in the dump, and in that time they've managed to turn this place into a mini-mall? Max looked over at her. I've got a better question. How can they even afford all of this? The hybrid replied, No idea. But someone's going to declare the bankruptcy of the century if things go south. Lucky for us, perhaps Will won't pull anything with this large pack around. Max shook his head. You can never be too sure, he murmured. Will has way too many odds in his favor. People will be so distracted by the enormity of this place that all he has to do is grab a kid, cover their mouth before they knew what hit them, and kill them behind the cotton candy stand. The very thing on which you rely on to protect the kids may very well turn into a trap with nowhere to go. Vicky seemed thoughtful for a moment, like Max had said a very intelligent thing. Then she said, It's true Will is beyond insane, but he isn't nearly as sloppy as you think he is. There's ground rules he lays for himself, and he follows them religiously. 1. He never kills somebody out in the open, and should there even be the slightest chance of him getting caught, he won't take the shot. 2, and you should notice by now, he's more of a lure-them-in kind of guy, not a snatch-and-grab type. He's crazy, but he isn't stupid. Max asked, So why wouldn't he try and do something different to throw us off his trail? I mean, if you remember the shooting incident, he had blood specks all over his face, and I witnessed him trying to scrub them off. Seemed pretty sloppy to me. Vicky replied, I'm actually fairly happy you didn't go to the police with that information. Will would have killed you for sure before you even had a chance to narc on him. The guard felt horrified. Was he that close to death for just seeing Afton do something careless? Vicky's eyes flickered as they locked him in their gaze. Shotguns aren't his main squeeze, she continued. He's probably trying to do something new, and it obviously backfired on him, so perhaps he'll stick to knives. Even if this place was loud and noisy during the day, I'm pretty sure you could still hear or feel a shotgun. Vicky had gotten closer to Max. She whispered, I truly believe that the one thing he fears more than death is being caught. He wants to stay off the cops' radar, mostly. And that's why he sent me away originally. Let the media say what they want about him. As long as his identity is safe, little else matters to him. He tends to clean up after himself. Suddenly Vicky fell to the floor as though she had been shoved aside. Max turned to see a she-bear with a blue ribbon on her head stomp by, who regarded him the way a dog would notice a cat walking across the street. She snapped a bit at Max, who stumbled back in a half-panicked state. Freddy snarled ferociously, glaring at her. The she-bear simply huffed in response before taking off. What was that? Max asked as Freddy helped Vicky to her feet. Is that going to be a problem? If she keeps this up, it will be, Vicky said between clenched teeth. Max just stared at her blankly. Vicky sighed. Well, fun fact of the day, Maxie. Most animatronics hate hybrids, but it's a fact of life I've learned to accept. That pleasant lady you just met was Trixie. She's, well, you know. Vicky cleared her throat. Anyway, I've picked up on another piece of info about Afton, which would explain why you aren't able to kill him and why us animatronics are the way we are. Max raised an eyebrow. Which is? He prompted. The hybrid said, He has an animatronic inside him. Probably more than one, but I'm just guessing. Max felt disgusted as he asked, How does that work? I can think of a few disturbing scenarios, Vicky sighed. As for there being more than one, I don't fully understand myself. Then she flexed her claws, staring at them. Max didn't know why, but she suddenly seemed sad. We all have feelings, powers, thought processes, she continued. It wasn't necessarily a part of our programming either. Souls in themselves shed a substance called remnant. That typically happens whenever there's a tragic event. Take the murders, for instance. It was only because of the remnant from those poor scarred souls that we started to expand our personalities beyond normal limits. Like we were an accidental science experiment. Maybe Will himself doesn't even know all the details of it yet. Remnant is a permanent after effect. It burrows into the metal of our bodies and ultimately gives us our own souls, and therefore our own personalities. The only thing we haven't figured out. Vicky paused, something reminiscent of a forced smile on her face, then finished, is whether or not to view it as a blessing or a curse, or both. Max groaned. This is insane. He had to sit down now. He rubbed his temples, trying to slowly take it all in before his head started hurting. Everything he was taught in engineering never mentioned this. The whole thing sounded like it belonged on a light-years-away planet in the far-distant future. Vicky winced before replying. I hope all this information at once didn't fry your brain. I've never told another human being what I've just told you. But yeah, the sooner we get the kiddos' souls out of our bodies, the less chance we risk them being exposed to things kids shouldn't be exposed to. Horrible violence was the one unavoidable endeavor we couldn't steer around, since they want revenge and all. Max asked, So you're telling me Afton is some sort of demigod because he inadvertently gave you things like emotions and feelings, and because he survived most things normal humans can't? Vicky cocked her head. Smarter than you look, she chuckled. But yes, that's why we must come up with a plan, preferably by tomorrow. The clock chimed 6 a.m., startling them both temporarily. All of the other animatronics apparently understood their large meet and greet had come to an end, because they started to disband as each group went to their respectful stages. Vicky was about to leave when Max asked softly, Vicky? She turned to look at him. He whispered, Are we still friends? After all this time, I thought. He didn't quite know how to put it. Vicky slowly smiled, but it still looked a tiny bit forced as she responded, Of course, Maxie. Then she jumped up into the air ducts and disappeared. Max went home, thankfully managing to stay awake during the drive home. Perhaps his full mind contributed to his tired state. Tommy was already fast asleep. Max kissed him on the cheek before retiring for the night himself, or what was left of it. He couldn't help but worry that he would have nightmares like the last time he worked at Freddy's, but he didn't. In fact, it was a long dreamless sleep that carried him through the night until the next day.